Everyone, in today's lecture, we'll be discussing about single phase induction type energy meter. We'll be discussing about its principle of operation, its construction and its working. We'll also be discussing about lag adjustment device and creep compensation, and using some mathematical calculations, we'll see how a single phase induction type energy meter, it can measure energy. And in the second portion of this lecture, we will be discussing about polyphase induction type energy meter. That is when multiple phases are there, that is for a three-phase supply, how single phase energy meter can be modified to measure three-phase energy. We will start discussion about a single phase induction type energy meter. Now, one thing that we have to understand here is that the single phase induction type energy meter, it works on the principle of electromagnetic induction. Now, as we will be looking further, we can see that this is somewhat the construction of a single phase induction type energy meter. Now here we can see that this is my shunt electromagnet, this is my series electromagnet. Now from this it is quite clear that on the aluminium disc two different fluxes are induced, and the interaction of these two different flux, it gives a torque. Now because of this, rotation in my aluminium disc can be seen. So we can clearly see here that because of the electromagnetic induction, we can see that a torque is developed on the single phase induction type energy meter. That is, there will be interaction of two different fluxes, and because of this, two different torques will interact between each other, and a rotation of the aluminium disc can be seen. Now let us move on to the construction part. Moving on to the construction part, we can see here that the energy meter will have four different systems, that is a driving system, moving system, a braking system and a registering system. Now let us go into detail about all these systems. The first system that we have is a driving system. Now when I am talking about a driving system, now from in the driving system I can say that there are two electromagnets, that is the core, or we'll be calling it as the shunt electromagnet and the series electromagnet. The shunt electromagnet is corresponding to the pressure coil, and the series electromagnet is corresponding to the current coil. Now we can see here that the core of this electromagnets, it is made of silicon steel lamination. So previously we have seen some instruments where the winding was air cored, but here we will see that the winding, it is not air cored. In between the winding there is a silicon steel core, that is the electromagnets will have a core of silicon steel laminations, as we can see in a transformer. Then we can see that is one coil of the electromagnet, it is excited by the load current, that is whatever current is flowing through the load, it will be completely passing through the series electromagnets. And we can see that the second coil, it will carry a current which is proportional to the supply voltage. That is, if this is my supply voltage, now whatever current is this supply voltage, it will mention the it will measure the voltage across the supply, and whatever current is flowing in this pressure coil or in the shunt electromagnet, it will be directly proportional to the current. It will be directly proportional to the value of the supply voltage. Now this two, as I've said earlier, these two magnets, it is called as my shunt electromagnet and my series electromagnet. Why it is series electromagnet? Because it is carrying a current I in series. Why shunt? Because it is measuring the voltage, and the voltage will be direct, and the whatever current is appearing across this shunt electromagnet, it is directly proportional to the voltage value. Now one more thing to be noted is that on the shunt electromagnet, this is my shunt electromagnet, on this I am having some copper shading bands. Now this copper shading bands, these are placed on the central limb, that is this full part. From this full part on the central limb, the copper shading bands are placed. Now these copper shading bands are placed in such a manner that its position is adjustable. It can either be moved up or it can be moved down. Its position is adjustable. Now the function of these copper bands, it is used to bring the flux produced by the shunt magnet exactly in quadrature with the applied voltage. That is, further discussion we will see that the voltage and the current value, that is the current across the shunt coil, its value should be exactly 90 degree for getting the very proper operation, that is to get the very accurate operation of a energy meter. Now this copper shading band will help, will see that the phase difference between the voltage and the current in the pressure coil is approximately in quadrature, or it is nearer to 90 degree. The second system that we are having is the moving system. Now in the moving system we can see that the moving system is nothing but the aluminium disc. Now this aluminium disc, it is made of it is mounted on a light alloy shaft, that is a shaft is passing through the center of this meter, and through the center of this meter this disc is attached, and this disc is positioned in the air gap between the series and the shunt magnet. So we can clearly see that the series magnet and the shunt magnet both are not touching the aluminium disc. In between both of this there is a small gap, that is they are not touching, that is they are not directly touching. As we have seen, it is working on the principle of electromagnetic induction, therefore there is no need of these magnets, that is shunt magnet, series magnet and aluminium disc to touch. Now here we can see that the rotor, that means the aluminium disc, it runs on a steel pivot, and this pivot is supported by jewel bearings. Jewel bearings means, as we have seen, two bearings are kept on both the ends, and to both these ends a shaft is there, and on this shaft this aluminium disc is attached. Now here we can see that this shaft that I am telling, or this pivot that I am telling, it will have some gears here, and this gear will be attached to some counting mechanism. So we will be moving on, we will be discussing about this part later. Now moving further, as I have said, a shaft is there, on the shaft my aluminium disc is connected. Now here one thing to be noted is that to the ends of this shaft small magnets are attached, and this what this magnets will do is, this magnet, it will try to attract to the upper bearing, that is the upper magnet will try to attract to the upper bearing, and the lower bearing connected the shaft connected to the magnet connected to the lower end of the shaft, it will try to attract to the lower bearing. That is, it will, in this manner we can see that this is producing a force to the upward direction. The second magnet, the lower magnet, is producing a torque, is producing a force to the downward direction. So in this manner we can see here that both, it is suspended, it is somewhat suspended, that it doesn't have direct contact with the bearing, it is somehow staying suspended. So because of this, friction with the bearing can be reduced. So for that purpose I am using magnets. Then we can see that the moving system is floating. That is, it is not directly attached to the bearing. Why? Because of the two magnets that I am having. The third system that I have is my braking system. Braking system is nothing but, that is this, for example, this is my aluminium disc. Now to my aluminium disc, here my shunt magnet will be, now this is the top view that I am talking about. Now here I will be having the shunt magnet, here I will be having the series magnet. Now to this end, what I am doing is, here I am adding a braking magnet, that is a permanent magnet, is positioned near the edge of the aluminium disc. Now this forms the braking system. Now aluminium disc will move in the field of this magnet, and it will produce the braking torque. Now the position of the permanent magnet is adjustable, that is, I can move it to this side or I can move it to this side, and therefore I can see that the braking torque can be adjusted. How it can be adjusted? It can just be adjusted by shifting the position of this permanent magnet. This braking magnet is a permanent magnet, just shifting its position, the braking torque's value can be varied. Now let me show it here. Now from this three-dimensional drawing, maybe it is clear. This is my aluminium disc. Now to my aluminium disc, we can see here at this end a braking magnet will be connected. Now this braking magnet, it will help in maintaining the position of the aluminium disc. Also it will help, that is, when no power is flowing, at that moment there will be no rotations in the aluminium disc. Why? Because of the braking magnet. The fourth system that I am having is the registering mechanism or the counting mechanism. So as we were discussing earlier, to the shaft some gear pinion arrangement is made. Now this gear pinion arrangement, it will be connected to a counting mechanism. Now in counting mechanism, as we can see in the odometers of our vehicles, we can see that now some numbers are mentioned here and some gear arrangement is there. Now because of that, what will happen, this gear, when it is connected to this, it will move the motors, it will move these registering mechanisms, and because of this continuously the readings can be monitored. That is a number will be recorded, which is proportional to how much rotations is being made here. Just like in our vehicles, the odometers that we have in our vehicle, that is this will be the pointer, this will be speed pointer, and next to that we'll be having how many kilometers we have traveled. Now that is also rotating because of some gearing mechanism. In that similar manner, some gearing mechanism we can use here, and we can register or we can count how much energy is utilized utilized during the operation. Now moving on to the torque equation. Now before moving on to the torque equation, we'll have to look into the phasor diagram. Now let us look into the phasor diagram. Let me explain the phasor diagram. Now here we can see that this is V, that is the voltage, that is to my energy meter, this is the supply voltage that I am giving. In between the supply voltage and the current, I am talking about current and voltage. In between this supply voltage and current, a phase difference phi is there. So it is quite clear that this is voltage, supply voltage, this is supply current, and to my supply, in between my supply voltage and my supply current, a phase difference phi is there. Now because of this current I, we can see that the flux phi s, that is I is flowing directly in my series magnet. Now as I is flowing in through my series magnet, so as I have said, this I is flowing through my series magnet. Now as I is flowing through my series magnet, this I will produce a flux, that is phi s. This I is producing a flux phi s, and because of this flux phi s, an EMF is induced, that is EES. Now we can see here that phi s and EES has a difference of 90 degree, that is the flux and induced EMF will have a difference of 90 degree. Then I can see that through my pressure coil a current IP is flowing. Now because of this current IP, current IP is flowing, and because of this current IP, a flux phi p is generated, and because of this flux phi p, I am getting EEP, that is an EMF that is exactly 90 degrees. Now here I can see that because of this induced EMF in the series, that because of the induced EMF of series magnet, a eddy current is flowing, that is IIS, that is having a gap of alpha, that is it is having a phase difference of alpha. In the similar manner, because of the EMF of induced because of my pressure coil, eddy current is flowing, that is also equal to alpha. Now this eddy current is produced on my aluminium disc. As the material of my aluminium disc is same, both will have similar phase differences, that is alpha. That is, from this it is quite clear that now here one more thing is that phi pt. Why phi pt? That is the flux because of my, now phi pt is nothing but, that is here flux links will be happening because of this, and also some flux will pass through this, and it will link through this direction. So phi pt is nothing but the flux linkages because of my pressure coil, and flux linkages because of the air gap. The value of this phi g is very small, so it is considerably very small, it can be neglected. Therefore I am having phi pt, both are in the same direction. Now from this phasor diagram it is quite clear that phi pt is nothing but phi p plus phi g. Now here one more thing to be noted is that that is, as I was telling earlier, that is the value between phi and IP should be exactly 90 degree for the proper operation. Now for that I am using copper shading bands I am using. Now we can see here that this angle phi and beta, when I am adding together, that is becoming delta. Now beta is nothing but the phase angle between phi s and phi p, that is the flux phi s and phi p will not be produced because of similar quantities, because of the differences in the coil, therefore it is having a phase difference of beta. Alpha is the phase angle between induced EMF E and the eddy current eddy current that is generated because of the induced EMF, that is alpha. Now I hope this phasor diagram is clear. Now based on this phasor diagram we will be doing some discussions. Now before proceeding on to the discussion, one thing that we have to note is that the general expression for induction type meter, the general expression, it states that whatever deflecting torque is produced in my induction type of instrument, it is because of the two interacting fluxes and F by Z, that is Z is nothing but the impedance of the path, and sine beta cos alpha. So beta is the difference between the flux and alpha is the difference between the eddy EMF and the eddy current alpha. So this is the very general expression for an induction type meter. So we are not moving into the discussions of how this is derived. We are just taking this expression and using this expression we will be moving further. Now I know that now in my condition, the deflection torque, the two fluxes that is produced is one is phi p and phi s. Therefore I will just take it to be phi s phi p, and to remove the sign of proportionality, what I am doing is I am adding a constant k1. So I am getting the expression to be Td is equal to k1 phi s phi p F by Z sine beta cos alpha. Now we know that phi s is directly proportional to I, and phi p is a quantity which is directly proportional to V, because Ip is the current because of which phi p is produced, because phi p is produced because of Ip, and Ip is the current which is proportional to V. Whatever voltage value is there, proportional to that voltage current Ip is flowing. Therefore I can take phi p is directly proportional to V. Now what I will do is this phi s and phi p I will replace with I and V. Now when I am replacing, some constant has to be there, that is if I am removing phi s, it will become, for example, Kai, then phi p it will become Kb V. So in this manner, when I am adding this, some extra constants are added. Already I am having some constant. Now what I will do is all these constants I will add and I will make it to be K2. Now when I am considering the value of frequency, it cannot be changed. The value of impedance of a material that I am using, it cannot be changed. Now as the material is same, the value of alpha will also remain same, because the material that I have used, its impedance is not changing. Because of that, the value of alpha cannot be changed. So here I can note that F, Z and alpha are constants. Now what I will do is, to this K2, what I will do is, as I have said, cos alpha is constant, F and Z is constant. So all these three quantities I'll add and I'll get a new constant K3. Now K3 is because of these three quantities. Now I can see that my expression is becoming Td is equal to K3 V into I sine del minus phi. How sine del minus phi? Now what I am doing is beta I can write it to be del minus phi. From this expression I can write it to be del minus phi. Right. Now then I have braking torque. Now what is braking torque? Now as I have said, because of the permanent magnet that is attached to one end of the aluminium disc, this will produce a braking torque. Now this braking torque's value will be dependent on how speed my disc is rotating. That is, it will the braking torque's value, it will be dependent on the speed at which my disc is rotating. Therefore what I will do is I will take the braking torque to be a constant into n. That is, the braking torque is directly proportional to the speed of rotation of my disc. Therefore I will get K4 into n. Now when I know that when my driving torque and braking torque are equal, at that condition I will get some steady speeds I will get. Now for example, if this is less and this is more, it means that my disc will not rotate. So when these two are in a balanced condition, at that time I will get some constant rotations in my aluminium disc. Now what I will, at that condition, what I am doing, I am taking my deflecting torque and my braking torque to be equal, and I am substituting the values, that is this value and this value I am substituting here. Now based on that, and I am taking, that is, the value of delta should be equal to 90 degree. Why? When it is closer to 90 degree, then only I will be getting proper operations in my induction type energy meter. So I am taking the value of del to be 90 degree. So practically this will not be 90 degree, this will be approximately equal to 90 degree. That is, using some arrangements like copper shading bands, we can achieve it, make it to be somewhat near to 90 degree. Now the expression here, what I will get is, I will get it to be n kVi sine 90 degree minus phi. Sine 90 degree minus phi, I can take it to be cos phi. Now here I can see that Vi cos phi is nothing but my power. So I am getting the speed of rotation, it is equal to K into power. Now if I have to consider the full rotation, now for example how many rotations are happening, now to calculate the full rotations, what I have to do is I have to integrate this over the time period. So I am integrating this over the time period. Integrating it over the time period, I get k integral of power into dt. Now power into dt is nothing but my energy. Now here I can see that the total number of revolutions, it is directly proportional to the energy. So from this discussion it is quite clear that an induction type of energy meter, it can be used, that is how many revolutions it is making, that revolutions will directly show how much energy is consumed. Now when I am talking about my single phase induction type energy meter, now here we can see that some problems occur. Now to address that problems, what we have to do is we will be using some techniques. We will be using that is there are many different type of errors. We will just be discussing about some very common errors for which compensation devices we will be using, physical compensation devices we will be using. That is the first type of error that we have is, that is we have to adjust the angle, that is lag adjustment we have to do. Now for performing lag adjustment, two techniques are used. That is, one we will be using one adjustable resistors we will be using, and the second that we will be using is we will be adjusting the position of my shading bands. Now let us look into how this is achieved. That is, when I am using adjustable resistance, this method that is showed here is, that is when I am using adjustable resistance, that is to the central limb of my induction type energy meter, a shading band is connected. Let me show it in the construction diagram. Now in this construction diagram we can see clearly this is the central limb. To the central limb some shading bands are arranged, shading bands are attached, and to this coil arm, what I am doing is I am going to add an adjustable resistance. I am going to add. Now when I am adding an adjustable resistance, now because of this what will happen is that is increase in the resistance value, it will decrease the current. That is, if the resistance value is increased, the current's value will be decreased, and as the current's value is decreasing, the MMF in the lag coil will also decrease. And second thing what we can do is, that is if the MMF's value is decreased, it will mean that the lag angle theta, whatever lag angle is there, this lag angle will also get reduced. So that is adjusting the resistance, I can easily adjust the lag angles that I am having. Now the value of lag angle that I am having, it can be increased by decreasing the resistance of lag coil circuit. That is, increasing the resistance and decreasing the resistance, I can adjust the lag angles to some extent. I can adjust. Now this adjustable resistance is directly connected to the coil, that is to the pressure coil of my shunt electromagnet. The second technique that we can use is the shading bands. Now the shading bands that I have talked about, these shading bands are directly placed on the central limb. The shading bands are directly placed on the central limb. Now we can see that these copper shading bands, they are placed on the central limb of the shunt magnet, and we can see that the adjustments can be done to the copper shading band. That is, this can be moved up or down, that is depending on our requirement. Now when we are moving the shading bands up the limb, we will see that they will embrace more flux. That is, as they are moving further, more amount of flux will flow across this shading bands. Now as more amount of flux are flowing through the shading band, it will result in more amount of induced EMF, current and MMF. That is, if more flux, if copper shading band is embracing more flux, now corresponding to this what will happen is the value of induced EMF, the value of induced EMF, the value of induced current and MMF value, this will increase considerably, and because of this we can see that the value of lag angle will also keep on increasing. Now corresponding to that, vice versa, what I can do is, when I am moving the shading band down, because of this the MMF decreases and the lag angle is reduced. So in this manner what I can do is I can adjust the lag angle of the instrument. I can adjust, that is, as I was saying, that is the value of delta should be equal to 90 degree for proper working of an energy meter. Now this angle I can adjust using As I have said, this can be adjusted using adjustable resistance and shading bands which are connected to the central limb of my induction type energy meter. The second problem that I am having is creeping. Creeping is nothing but a slow but continuous rotation is obtained even when there is no current flowing through the current coil. That is, if I am giving supply only to my pressure coil, now because of that, this pressure coil it will produce induced EMF, and because of that my aluminum disc will start rotating. Now when no current is consumed, that is load is consuming no current, even at that situation what is happening, this aluminum disc is rotating, and because of this false readings of energy consumed will be happening. Now to avoid that, what I can do is I can drill two holes, that is two diametrically opposite holes, that is at two diametrically opposite end. What I will do is to the aluminum disc that I am having, to that aluminum disc I will be drilling a hole. Now what will happen is when this disc is rotating, and when this disc is rotating, when this hole is coming in below this, when the hole is coming below this central limb, what will happen is here no flux, that is no interaction will be there, that is flux will directly flow from the north pole to the south pole of the magnet, and because of this what will happen, the rotation of my aluminum disc will be stopped. Now here what will happen is there will be rotation, but only half rotation will be there. Why? Because two holes are there, either rotating in this direction or in the opposite direction. If I see, only half rotations are possible. Now to avoid creep, what I can do is I can add two diametrically opposite holes. Now talking about polyphase energy meters, we can see that the energy in a polyphase circuit, it can be measured by a group of single phase energy meters which will be connected according to Blondel's theorem. The Blondel's theorem we have discussed when we were discussing about the measurement of three-phase power. Now according to the principles of Blondel's theorem, we can measure the energy of a polyphase system. Now we can see that when we are discussing about polyphase wattmeters, what we could do is we could mount the element on same spindles which will drive the registering mechanism. What we can do is a same spindle we'll use, and to the same spindle 2 or 3 coils will be there, and based on this I can get 3-phase wattmeters I can get. Or what I can do is I can use multi-disc type arrangement. Now in multi-disc type arrangement, 2 or 3 different discs will rotate, and these actions it will be combined together for wattmeters. The same principle can be used for induction type of energy meters as well. Now here let us discuss about 2-element energy meter. Now the diagram that is shown here is of a 2-element energy meter. Now here we can see that for a 2-element energy meter, it uses a 3-phase 3-wire system. Now here we can see that the meter is provided with 2 discs, that is one for each element. Then we can see that it is necessary that the driving torques of the 2 elements should be equal for equal amounts of power passing through each of them, because they are connected to the common shaft. So if it is connected to the common shaft, it means that if one meter is moving fast and one is moving slow, that should not be there, it should be avoided. That is, for equal amount of power that is passing, both should show equal amount of rotations. Then we can see that the pressure coils are connected in parallel and the current coils are connected in series in such a manner that the torque produced by the 2 elements will oppose each other. That is, we can see that the normal compensating devices are attached to each element, and also a magnetic shunt is placed in either one or both the positions where the 2 torques which are exactly equal and they are opposite to, and the balance of the torque of the 2 elements are equally achieved. Now here we can see that the 2 elements are equally similar. That is, this we'll consider this to be a single phase energy meter, this to be another single phase energy meter. The only difference here is that is both the aluminum discs, they are mounted on a single spindle or they are mounted on a single shaft. The rotating elements are mounted on a single shaft. Now looking here, we can see that the phase 3, it is the current coil is in series. Phase 1 current coil is in series. Then we can see that the shunt coil is connected in between 1 and 2. The second shunt coil is connected in between 3 and 2. That is, the second shunt coil is connected in between 3 and 2. The first shunt coil is connected in between 1 and 2, as we have seen for the 2 wattmeter method. In that similar manner, we can see that the connections for 2 element energy meters are also made. Now, as we have clearly seen that 2 wattmeters if I am using, that is 2 phase single wattmeters, if I am 2 single phase wattmeters if I am using, I can easily measure the 3 phase power. In that similar manner, 2 single phase energy meters, if I am connecting it together in this manner, I can easily measure the power of a 3 phase system. Now here also we can see that some brake magnets are also used, and all the other arrangement, they are as similar, but here only one thing is that here there will be no two registering mechanisms. Here I will be having two moving systems, I will be having two braking systems, I will be having, and two driving systems I will be having, but I will be having only one registering system that is connected to the single spindle or the single shaft.